If you're looking for a plug-in hybrid SUV as a company car that's cheap to run and offers decent performance, then I might just have the perfect car for you.
Hello and welcome to Naveed for Speed. This is the Suzuki Across. Now, it may look familiar to you, and that's because this car and the Toyota RAV4 are pretty much the same car. Back in 2019, Suzuki made a deal with Toyota to produce some vehicles due to European emissions laws, and that's why we've got the plug-in Suzuki Across and the Suzuki Swace, which is basically a Toyota Corolla estate. So this car and the RAV4 are pretty much exactly the same, but not exactly. There are some subtle differences. For example, the front end styling of the two vehicles are different. If I put them side by side, this is the Toyota RAV4 and this is the Suzuki Across. Let me know in the comments which you think looks better. I know which one I like. But anyway, I'm going to show you a little bit around the Suzuki Across, show you how it feels to drive, and of course I'm going to let you know some things that I like about the car and some things that I don't like about the car. Number one, the seating position. The seating position is actually really good. You are very high up, you can see all the traffic ahead and you can see the traffic behind you. There's plenty of leg room, and of course the seats are electronically adjustable. You also get electronically adjustable lumbar support, so you can support your back really well. And even though you do sit up really high up in the car, you can see the bonnet in front of you. You're not restricted for headroom. You've got plenty of headroom as well. And it's a similar case in the whole of the interior, I suppose. It's very spacious. You have some cup holders here which sit side by side, which basically shows how spacious it is. Normally they sit one in front of the other, but because there's so much room, there's so much space for cup holders to sit side by side. And of course the whole of the interior is actually very interesting. Number two are the buttons on the interior. They are tactile buttons. There's no haptic feedback stuff. You know when you press the button, and of course that's advantageous if you're out in the wilderness, for example, and you've just come back and you're wearing gloves or your hands are cold. It's easy to use buttons. And they're very intuitive as well, very easy to get used to. You know exactly what each button does, especially for example with the cruise control. You know exactly what button will do what for you. So I like that, the fact that the car has buttons rather than a lot of touchscreen. I know the infotainment system is touchscreen, but the rest of it, nice and easy to use. Number three is the comfort level. I'm really enjoying how comfortable this car is. It does have the power on tap if you need it, but that suspension is really forgiving and it really does take out, it soaks up all the bumps in the road. And despite it being such a big car, it doesn't encourage you to drive fast. You just want to enjoy the drive. This is actually a rather bumpy road, but I'm not feeling any of it. I really enjoy how comfortable the suspension and of course the seats are as well. So top marks for comfort. Number four is the electric range. Now the Suzuki Across comes with 46 miles of pure electric range, which is actually really good, especially if you're only going to use the car for commuting to and from work and for nipping down the shops. That means that most of the time, as long as you keep the car fully charged, you will only be using electric power, and that will save you a lot of money. Now I'm going to mention some of the things that I'm not too keen on with the Suzuki Across. Number one, there's no satellite navigation. Now in the Toyota RAV4 you do get satellite navigation, but in the Suzuki Across you don't. Now I know in the modern day and age we can use our phones for maps, but it's always nice to have the maps there. But I suppose to counteract that, the car actually comes with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So it's maybe not that big of a deal. Number two is the luggage space, or the boot space rather. Now the Suzuki Across comes with 490 litres of boot space, and if you were to put the rear seats down, you get over 1100 litres of boot space. You also get this sort of parcel shelf which we're used to seeing in Toyotas, but at first glance it doesn't look like a lot of room, especially because you get this sort of flat, no load lip, which is good for putting luggage in and out of the car, but generally it does cut into some of the luggage space. Underneath you get a spare tire as well, and a load of hybrid stuff underneath. The batteries are down here as well, so that cuts into a lot of space, but generally I think the luggage space could have been a bit better in a car of this class. Number 3, the charging time. So to charge this car to get the full 46 miles of electric range, it takes 5 hours on a 3.5 kilowatt charger at home. Now in comparison, the Toyota RAV4 will do that in 2.5 hours with 7 kilowatts. So I feel like there could have been some improvements made with the charging, but if you are going to charge it at home, if you can plug it in and you can leave it for 5 hours, happy days. It's not that big of a deal, but yeah, it's definitely a lot slower than the Toyota RAV4. Number 4 is the interior. Now this is actually a very tough one for me because I've already mentioned that I like the buttons, and of course the materials on the interior are very nice to touch and they look good as well, but I feel like the interior could have been improved slightly, especially since rival brands like Land Rover and Range Rover, for example, they have a bit more of a luxurious interior for cars at the same price, especially some of their plug-in hybrids as well. So I do have to mark the interior down a little bit, but like I say, it's intuitive, there's buttons, and it's everything that you need. So what is the Suzuki Across like to drive? Well, my immediate impressions of the car was that it is comfortable. It's certainly very soft and easy to go over a bit of a bumpy road, but currently we're on a bit of an uphill stretch, and so despite this car mostly being in electric mode, currently it is getting some assistance from that internal combustion engine. The internal combustion engine is a 2.5 litre 4-cylinder engine, and combine that with the electric motor, this car produces a system output of 302 brake horsepower. That means that this car can do 0 to 62 miles per hour in just 6 seconds, and a top speed of 112 miles per hour. Now, as again, like you can see, I'm on an uphill stretch, so we're getting a lot of assistance from the internal combustion engine, and the car has a CVT gearbox, so you might be able to hear the engine noise, especially as I try to accelerate. The car tries to rev higher and always give you the power that you need, but at times it can be annoying, especially if you're trying to accelerate uphill like I was doing, or if you're on a motorway or a bit of a faster dual carriageway, for example, and you're trying to overtake. As you put your foot down, you will definitely hear that engine note, and it's not the best engine note in the world. But once you get up to speed, the electric motors will take over again, and it's really pleasant and refined. It's quiet enough for you to enjoy the drive, and where I'm sitting, the seats also help that comfort as well. You can adjust them electronically to give yourself the best driving position, which I would say is great. Out of the rear window you can see above the traffic behind you, which is always a bonus, and it has electronically adjustable lumbar support, so you can always find that comfortable position that you need whilst driving. The brakes need to be good because this is a very heavy car. So what are the brakes like? I mean, what I found is, especially driving on the country roads that I'm on now, whenever I need to pass another car, I have plenty of braking available to do so. In fact, there have actually been times where I braked early thinking I was in a different car, and I've stopped well in advance of where I needed to. So overall, the car's driving dynamics are not as you would imagine when you see it on paper. I mean, 0 to 62 miles per hour in 6 seconds, 302 brake horsepower. You would be forgiven for thinking this is a bit more of a sporty car. But because it's so large, it's more comfortable. So it encourages you to drive slowly and savor the drive and savor the view. The car comes with 3 driving modes. You get Eco, Normal and Sport. But you also get a number of different electric hybrid driving modes. So for example, you can click this button right here and set the car to just EV mode. So you're only using electric power. You can put it in auto, so the car will automatically decide whether you need EV power, internal combustion engine, or both petrol and EV power combined. Or you can also press the charge hold button, which is what I was actually doing on the way here, which allows you to save your battery life, and it allows you to use the petrol engine to get you to where you need to go, and then you will always have a bit of battery power, electrical power for when you need to use that, for example. And it will also charge some of that battery as well, so you get more range out of your battery. Now obviously that does kill a bit of the fuel, but if you are driving this around the city, if you're using it to commute to and from work, then you're mostly going to be using battery power, so you're not going to be using a lot of fuel, and this car can get you a very good fuel economy. Because I've been using both fuel and battery power, and I've been having it in the charge hold modes more often, I've been seeing fuel economy of anywhere between 40 to 50 miles per gallon. But in this car, with just purely electrical power, you will obviously find a much better range. The one part of the car that I haven't yet mentioned is the trail mode. If you press the trail mode, the car will automatically engage the 4-wheel drive, and it's basically used for light off-roading, basically. I wouldn't necessarily say this car is a purebred off-roader from what I'm seeing or what I've experienced so far, but I reckon it can handle a lot of terrain pretty well, especially if it's wet or if it's snowing, for example. You have the comfort that the 4-wheel drive can help you. What I have found, however, especially in damp conditions like this, that the car, because it's got so much power, sometimes it spins its wheels when you're taking off, when you're setting off from a junction, for example. So it's good to know that that power is there, and because you've got the electrical motor as well, you've always got that instant torque. So overall, the Suzuki Across is a nice, comfortable car which will give you great benefits in terms of fuel economy, and of course, if you're buying it as a company car, it gives you a very good benefit in kind tax advantage, and with very low CO2 emissions, just 22 grams per kilometer. So I think if you are in the market for a plug-in hybrid vehicle, then the Suzuki Across is definitely one that you should consider. But I will mention that despite it being a very capable car, and it does cost just under £50,000 in this spec. I mean, you can only get the car in one spec, but it costs just under £50,000. And quite frankly, it doesn't have the same appeal as some of the more premium brands like the Range Rovers and the Land Rovers, for example. So you won't get a lot of glamour in this car, but you get no nonsense tactile buttons. You get it's just simple, it's basic, but it's very capable, and there's no gimmicks to it. It is pure a proper workhorse, this car.
The Suzuki Across isn't going to set the world alight. It certainly doesn't match the big dogs when it comes to glamour, but it does feel good. A sophisticated choice when it comes to hybrid SUVs, and with 46 miles of range and only 22 grams per kilometer of carbon emissions, it's certainly a sensible car with decent performance if that's what you need. The Suzuki Across is a car that you must consider.